With the shock of the Erdogan losses in Turkey in municipal elections, there is exactly, one, two, maybe three experts I'd want to talk to. But the most accessible one for you is my book of the year, The Loom of Time, for 2023. It transfixed me. It is Robert D. Kaplan doing what he's doing. He moves from Morocco over to the various stands to the east. It is a spectacular book. In chapter 3, we find Robert D. Kaplan slowly walking around this architecturally complex and monumental structure known as Constantinople. Robert Kaplan, thank you so much for joining us today. Is Erdogan done?
No, first of all, it's a pleasure to be with you, Tom. No, Erdogan is not done. He's not up for re-election for a number of years now. And look at it this way. He's been in power 20 years.
Yeah.
You don't stay in power for 20 years in a partial or a full democracy without ultimately going downhill. So he's still got some ammunition up his sleeve. And the big question for Turkey, though, is, look, imagine if Donald Trump had been in power in the United States for 24 years like Erdogan has. What would be the state of institutions, the Justice Department, etc.? Erdogan has destroyed Turkish institutions. So the question for Turkey is, even if there is a new prime minister, a new president in a few years, like Imamoglu, who won the mayorship of Istanbul the other day in a big victory, even if he becomes prime minister, will there be institutions to work with, or will Turkey have a kind of Weimar chaotic situation?
Out of his childhood and his, the interesting childhood of Erdogan in the 22 years that he's been the leader, his foreign policy has been to look south and take his Islamic view across the Levant, across all of the Loom of Time, the arc of the Middle East. Is he diminished in his influence in the Middle East now because of these election losses?
Yes, he is. You lose this big in a nationwide election, which is what this really was. He not only lost in Istanbul, he lost across the country. This lowers his credibility throughout the region, which was which was problematic to begin with, because the major mistake he made a long time ago was to back the radicals in the Middle East, not the conservative Sunni Arab regimes. So it wasn't as if he was pro-Arab and anti-Israel. He was pro-radical Arab. And as a result, he misread the region.
All right, speaking of another region of the world, let's go to Asia. President Biden, President Xi spoke by phone about a number of key issues here. Robert, how do you view that part of the world right now and the U.S. role and how the U.S. should act over the coming months and quarters and maybe year?
I think between now and the election in next November, the Biden administration is going to try to orchestrate a rapprochement with China, because that will look good in elections, lower the talk of conflict, stabilize the relationship. That will look good with voters. And also the relationship has gotten so toxic, so dangerous, that something has to be done. Financial markets have priced in the war in Ukraine. They've priced in Gaza, all of that nicely. But if there were ever a real shooting war between the world's two largest economies in a high-end military conflict, it would be devastating for financial markets, absolutely devastating. And that's if the war only lasted a few days. It could go on longer. So it's imperative of the Biden administration, now I think the Chinese authorities as well, not to solve their problems, but to build a parameter around them, to build rules of the road so that the downward turn in relations is at least stabilized.
Robert, again, there's so many ways we could go here. We have limited time. Let's switch gears yet again, go to the Middle East. It appears that Israel is just not backing down.
What a mess.
On any scenario. Exactly, Tom. Exactly. And it seems like the Biden administration and others are growing a little weary of Israel's position here. Where are we there?
We are in essentially a war with Iran that started on October
Okay.
7th. The October 7th atrocities were so bestial, they were so intimate that I believe it changed the Israeli calculus on how to deal with Iran. And we saw an example of this the other day where they killed a number of Iranian generals. This is going to go on because October 7th, even if the Iranians were not directly implicated, they were fundamentally implicated because they had been supporting Hamas for so many years. So we're in a proxy war with Iran. For the moment, it's in Gaza. I think this summer it will move northward to northern Israel, southern Lebanon, because Israel has about 80,000 citizens who cannot return to their homes in northern Israel. That's a de facto loss of sovereignty, which no
Right.
democratic government could ever accept permanently.